here's what actually happened. They were also very pro-immigration. I remember this. We would go to Vancouver, Canada, Toronto, some of these big cities. Now, I know immigration is a hot topic, but you have to admit that when we let immigrants in, it creates all kinds of things. It fills jobs, which a lot of people are not happy about. It actually raises rent prices. It raises housing prices because you can't just let that many people in without actually having pressure on those. And so let's just talk about Canada specifically. Back in 2015, Canada's policy was about 240 to 280 immigrants, 80,000 immigrants a year. That was their policy. Now it's between 400,000 and 500,000. Okay, so why am I going here? Because also part of this issue, rent growth, housing growth, all that stuff, it's not just a rate issue. It's also people. And so what they did is they more than doubled their immigration policy. Now, so I dug into this a little bit deeper. And what's the real population of Canada? It's 41.5 million people. And so I ChatGPT'd how many of those are immigrants? 23%, or 8.3 million are immigrants. And why is this all important? Because the majority of this happened from that time period that Danille's talking about. And housing prices, by the way, is this eerie or what? In 2015, Canadian housing prices were just over $400,000. Very similar to where we are today. And now they're over 700. So there was a period of time where they rose almost 10% a year for 6 years straight. So this all is one big thing. And so I know we're off on an immigration tangent, but I think it's important that you should also take a look at the immigration, the population, what's going on with the inflow of people, because that also drives up housing supply. And why did they do it? Because I was like, why would Canada double their immigration? Well, they did it for a couple of reasons. One, for low-cost labor. Oddly enough, the wages were high, and so they started letting more people in to cover that. And you guys can just take a look at this. It's all online. And then, of course, what happened as a result of that? Well, the zoning. Nobody wanted NIMBY, not in my backyard. So they, on one hand, they said, we don't want any development. On the other hand, they increased the population. The recipe for that, guys, is only higher rent and only higher prices. Now, we're not there right now, but it is something certainly to watch.
Yeah, and we're going to dig more into the Canadian housing market and some of those impacts as soon as we hear a word from. So when they did this in Canada, what you have to understand is how much the assets grew. So they had a 185% debt to wage ratio, so, and that was one of the highest, in any of the first world countries.
Yeah. I've been to Canada a lot, guys, as I've said over the years. I go a fair amount, and I will tell you, it's been very, very interesting. And the core cities are all over 1 million. And what are those cities? They would be like Toronto, Vancouver, as example, both on different sides of the coast. But you think about their wage growth during that period of time. That's the big issue. What it did is it's actually creating a big gap, for the middle class, right? The other issue up there we should mention is that their rates reset every 5. I think it is, right? Every 5 years. So another point that I forgot to mention, the Fannie Mae, one of the reasons that, one of the things that came out of Fannie Mae back in the 30s was the 30-year mortgage. And that's a really important piece, guys. I don't know if you guys realize how much of a gift that is. You could literally lock a rate today for 30 years.